what I think Trump is underestimated. I think he knows a lot more. He's got a very comprehensive understanding of how the world works. He really does. He may not be as interested. He's certainly not an intellectual, but that sort of stance saying I have more faith in states than I do in the federal is very typically American. And I think he could, or people could make a very good argument for why states know better than Washington.
President Donald Trump signed an executive order on March 20th, 2025, which I think is 4 or 5 days ago, to start the process of eliminating the U.S. Department of Education. While he can't completely shut down the agency without approval from Congress, this order begins the effort to move key functions like Pell Grants and funding for low-income schools to other federal agencies. Trump has long believed that states could have more control over education. This decision follows recent cuts to the department's staff and efforts to reduce government involvement in schools. Some Republican lawmakers support getting rid of the department, while critics warn that doing so could hurt services like student loans and financial aid for low-income students. Legal challenges, again, like we talked about in the last topic, are expected because many believe Trump can't legally eliminate the department through an executive order. The question associated with this: what are your thoughts on the Department of Education no longer having federal oversight? Are states equipped to handle this? If the Department of Education is gone, how can states make sure that all students, especially in poor areas, still get a good education?
So I think the smart thing to say for a guy like me is, I don't know. I don't know what the Department of Education does. I know a little bit of what they do, but there's a good book by Michael Lewis called The Fifth Risk, and he looks at how important something like the Department of Energy and Department of Agriculture, the things that they do that you would never think about. So who keeps track of all the nuclear waste under the ground?
DOE.
Who keeps it seeping into who keeps it from seeping into the Columbia River? Who manages the electric grid? Well, that would be the Department of Energy. Who keeps track of all the weapons-grade uranium all over the world? Department of Energy. Who ensures that all the diagnostic machines like PET scans, after they're done using, after the uranium rods they're done using, who keeps track of those rods? Who makes sure that somebody doesn't detonate that over the Super Bowl with a drone and render that entire town unable to live, unlivable for 20 years? Department of Energy. Who shoots firecrackers into the air when you get on a plane at the right time to ensure geese stay out of your plane's engine? Department of Agriculture. Who keeps peregrine falcons who watch the airport? The answer is because they're very territorial birds, keep all the other birds out of the airfield. That would also be Department of Agriculture. Who makes sure that sheep are able to graze now at higher altitudes, because they can't graze at lower altitudes because climate change has given them, it's harder for them to find grass, but we need wool and we need things like that. So scientists I think it might be the Department of Agriculture as well, are looking into that. So there are a lot of things that when I'm having work done in my house, and I've just bought a house, when I walk in the house with my young children, there are materials in this house that I am assuming aren't poisonous. They aren't leaching poisons into the air. I just assume that's the case. I think that's Department of Commerce or something like that. So there are a lot of things that government does that all of us rely on every single day, and we're not aware of it. And we just assume things are going to be safe because somebody's managing the grid and the supply chain. So I'm very hesitant to say, let's get rid of the entire Department of Education, right? I don't know all the things they do, because I don't believe that everything they do is ineffectual, and I don't believe everything they do is not good. Now, one caveat to all of that: how's it going? The Department of Education is supposed to be there for poor students in this country and make sure they're educated. How's it going? Just wondering where we rank in math and reading and writing.
I looked that up actually before we sat down, and we're not at the bottom of the list, but we're certainly not at the top. It's not going as well as people.
Right. So now again, like with anything else, Is that because families have broken down and schools are great, but parents suck? I don't know. I don't know. So I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna make full circle and say I don't know at the end of the day. But I'm not so outraged when a disruptor like Trump and Elon Musk at all come in and say we're going to move fast and break things, and we're going to be using a blunt instrument because anything is better than what has been. And I think there's a good argument for that.
What is your personal plan with your young children? Are you going to go with the public education route or private?
My other two kids are in public school, and I like school. Well, actually, that's not true. My son's in private school. I got talked into that. I got talked into it.
Probably cheap though.
Because smaller classes are good because apparently he inherited my ADHD. I've got a lot of that. And so he's in those classes, and I guess it's good, but he's going to go to public school next year because I want to get something out of the taxes I pay or did pay in California. But my thing about homeschooling versus public schools, I like public school because you have to contend with the real world, teaches you how to deal. And I think that's a value. So that's my stance on that.
Look at that thing. It's rotating.
On the special 4-episode Change Agent series, Black Project, I talk with experts, whistleblowers, and insiders to try to figure out if our government is behind these strange craft, and if so, why are they keeping the truth from the public?
We're told never to talk about this.
We'll look at the history of special access programs and see just how far ahead the most secretive elements of the military-industrial complex are and what it will take to finally get the truth.
Has the government conducted secret UAP crash retrieval programs, yes or no?
Yes. All three of my kids are now out of school, shockingly enough, which, I mean, actually in the phase that you were in, you can't even see the end of that rainbow.
So jealous, and a full head of hair. Congrats. And shoulders for days. Is that camo, or are you wearing just hunting garb so you can go out and shoot ducks in a blind? Because I can't even see you.
No, I harvested the wool and then dyed it in ethically, of course, and then, knitted it together before the show. I started it an hour ago. And
do you have a homemade loom? You seem like a loomer.
No, I would not have any fingers. I've actually been around looms and they seem wildly dangerous to me. But yeah, I am a product of public school, and my children went to public school. I think there is a really good argument, even just for the social dynamic of being exposed to people that are in a wildly different familial or economic situation than you are, that are going to public school as well. To me, it's essential that children realize that the world that they're growing up in is not unique. Whether they are coming from a silver spoon or, abject poverty, I think it's good to see that the other exists, the other side of the coin is there, and that you can flip the coin if you dedicate yourself to it enough. It's not magic; you're going to have to work for it. But when it comes to public school, would you rather see the states with autonomy to create and craft and manage that system, or would you rather see the federal government overseeing it in all 50 states?
My instinct is to say states. My instinct is I'm wary of federal bureaucracy, top-down command, the bloated and unaccountable leviathan that is the U.S. government. So my instinct is to say that I think states have a better understanding. It's a little bit like relying on your field generals and not the guys in the Pentagon when it comes to war. There are certain things that people just know when they're closer to the source.
Yep.
So my instinct is, and this is what I think Trump is underestimated for I think he knows a lot more. He's got a very comprehensive understanding of how the world works. He really does. He may not be as interested. He's certainly not an intellectual, but that sort of stance saying I have more faith in states than I do in the federal apparatus is very typically American, and I think he could, or people could make a very good argument for why states know better than Washington. So Yeah, I think that my default would be that. I may be ignorant to it.
Yeah, I spent a little bit of time Googling because obviously I knew we were going to talk about this and kind of just looking at where the U.S. ranks. And let's just say that the results are not identical, depending on what you put into the search. What I can tell you, though, in all of them, when you rack and stack against largely 40 first world nation peers that we would have, we are not number one in any category, except for potentially gun violence. But that's a different conversation. We are also not last in any educational category as well, but we trend to be more past center line towards the bottom than we trend.
How do you account then for the fact that we may be in the middle or we may be hopeless in certain areas, but somehow we lead the world in innovation?
Do we?
We do. I mean, when it comes to tech, nobody's in our area code. When it comes to biomed, nobody's in our area code. I mean, when it comes to so many things, the United States is far and away the great innovator, far and away. That's always what we've had over China. That's always what we've had over Japan. They're excellent mimics and very good at going beyond what we come up with. Yeah. But if you look at AI, if you look at the new frontiers of everything that we're doing, autonomous robots and stuff like that, good luck competing with the U.S.
My initial response to that would be likely, if you're using the example of China and Japan, I would say as a society, we value independence and people driving off into the unknown more than those two countries do, in my experience. Specifically China, right? Because they're about the party first, the individual second. The U.S., I'm not going to say is about the individual first and the country second, but it might be neck and neck. I mean, we tell people from an early age, go out and figure shit out, go break things along the way. And I'm not saying that Japan isn't like that either, but I think it's probably a little bit more ingrained in our culture than either of those other two examples that you gave.
That's right. That's a very good answer. I agree with that answer.
What I would like to see is, going back to the Googling, and you can kind of rack and stack where the U.S. falls, even though, yes, we have those innovators, which, I mean, honestly, though, what you're talking about could be less than 100 people in a population of 340 million making those innovations. Let's just reverse engineer why we aren't doing so well against some of these other first world nations. And instead of maybe destroying or dismantling the Department of Education, if we can reverse engineer or figure out where we're falling short, let's reverse engineer a solution for that and maybe reorient the organization for that. Like, to me, that would be a great first step, because I'm not going to sit here and say by any stretch of the imagination that I understand the complexities of the Department of Education or any other department of the U.S. government. But I do think we can do better, because I default to what you said earlier. How's that going for you? And the answer is not fucking great.
No, it's just not.
No.
It's just not.
And so let's figure out why. And if we have, do we need to destroy the agency? No. Could we reorient the agency? Could we, I mean, I'm not a sculptor, but we could maybe chip away some of the marble of other areas and make it more towards what we need it to be.
I guess sometimes I worry about, first of all, I like that Trump's such a disruptor. And I like that Doge is doing what it's doing. And of course, there are things to criticize. And of course, there are shortcomings. And of course, they're going to make mistakes. But I like that. What I think sometimes I worry about is creating general bad guys, kind of like, we're going to get rid of the Department of Education and now things are going to get better. It's a little bit like, and you'll appreciate this. So when we designate the cartels terrorist organizations, mm-hmm. And then we say we're going to take a bunch of guys like like you guys, a bunch of elite commandos. And, I've heard a lot of guys like me say this, that, they wait till Delta Force and Dev Crew get in there, man. They're going to clear that whole problem up. And it's to fundamentally misunderstand what a cartel is, how that entire economy works, how many people are reliant upon that kind of economy, and what it really means when you're trying to control, quote unquote, drugs coming into the country. Good fucking luck. You know how it works? You know how you get drugs into the country? You pay a border control agent $100,000 to do this. Watch this. That's all you do. You want to stop that? You want to keep his head steady? You go ahead and pry his eyes open? You go ahead. So the more you learn how complex and how intricately involved everyone is, how many people are caught up in this web, the more you kind of go, I don't think trying to control these things is a good idea. I think sometimes working with. Alexander the Great was able to conquer the world, not because he came in and crushed everybody, because he would come in and say, listen, keep all your customs, and you can even keep your leaders, and you can dress the way you want. You just got to pay us a vig, pretty much. And his soldiers were known to not only, after they'd conquered something like Persia, his soldiers were known to be in Persian garb by the time they were done their deployment, with a Persian wife and Persian kids. So he was smart. He knew how to do that. You come in and you say, well, these people don't really know how to live life, and we're going to take these Iraqis and turn them democratic and American. You're a fucking moron. You're a dum-dum, because you don't know anything about human nature, and you certainly don't know anything about history. And so that's the one liability here that I have. I worry that we are saying he's going to come in there, and whenever I hear people say he's going to come in there and clean all this shit up, beware of purity. Beware of projects that endeavor to create purity of any kind. It ain't the way it works. Yeah. Systems don't work that way. Human beings certainly don't work that way. And we tried that in the 20th century. We tried to create utopia, and we tried to purify certain countries and races, and didn't work out so well. Thank God. So I guess that would be the one thing I would caution.